power structure of the heavens. And they occasionally meet to determine what they're going to do about mankind.
Zeus created the Council of Nine, and this was Aphrodite, Apollo, Athena, Demeter, Hephaestus, Hera, Hermes, Poseidon, and Zeus himself. And these are the gods that then could interact with humans, I guess, to keep us in line.
"400 miles south of El Paso, Texas, in northern Mexico, stretches a remote and rugged section of high desert. This area, near the town of Ceballos, is referred to by the locals as the Zona del Silencio, or the Zone of Silence. It's an epicenter for some of the strangest phenomena ever experienced on Earth.
Nothing works there. If you go there with your cell phone, the cell phone stops. If you go with a radio, it stops. If you go there with a compass, the needle just keeps spinning.
It's completely bizarre. There's strange rocks everywhere. You have strange mutated animals living in the desert in this area. You feel a strange tingling when you're there.
The Zone of Silence was first identified in the 1930s by Francisco Sarabia, a Mexican pilot who claimed that his radio had mysteriously failed to function while flying over the area.
They call it Mexico's Bermuda Triangle. It's located practically on the same parallel, 28th and 26th parallel, and as a result of that, it goes and connects with the Egyptian pyramids. So all around that whole sector, there seems to be some connection between the anomalies that are occurring through these different parts of the world.
As a scientist, you're trained to be skeptical, or maybe you were born that way, but we really don't believe anything. You know, nothing is proven until you actually have evidence. But I can say that Earth's magnetic field does vary across the surface by up to a few %.
One of the strangest cases involving the Zone of Silence took place on July 11th, 1970, when the U.S. Air Force launched an Athena missile from its military facility in Green River, Utah. The missile was programmed to land 700 miles away at the White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. But for some unexplained reason, the Athena missile flew hundreds of miles past the White Sands Range towards the Zone of Silence.
Not only did it go off course, it way overshot, as if it had been picked up or yanked or dragged or pulled into it. There was a NASA spokesman who even said it was weird. It was like the thing just got pulled into this area, and it ended up crashing there and breaking up into bits.
But some claim this missile is not the only thing that's been mysteriously pulled into the Zone of Silence. Ancient alien theorists believe an unusually large number of meteorites have crashed here.
The evidence seems to be indicating that the Zone of Silence is some powerful energy vortex area that's literally sucking meteorites and other space debris right into this small area of northern Mexico.
There's a high level of magnetism in the area. That's been proven by science. We know there's a magnetic signature to the entire area. Is it strong enough to attract large objects like meteorites? I think we need more research, but I don't think that research is being done right now.
Quito, Ecuador. here in the grasslands of South America, are the remnants of the great Incan road. The sophisticated network of pathways and trails covers over 25,000 miles through Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. The Inca built this vast roadway without the use of the wheel, draft animals, metal tools, or even a written language. Yet modern engineers have noted that the roadway incorporates advanced engineering principles.
The Inca road system was really one of the most magnificent ancient architectural feats ever made. One of the things that made the Inca roads so incredible is that they traversed the Andes, these incredibly tall, steep mountains. They had to bore tunnels through mountains. They cut narrow paths along sheer cliff faces.
One of the most intriguing things about the Inca road system is that there is a major artery that goes from the northwest to the southeast. And along that, we find almost every major megalithic construction, including Tiwanaku, Pumapunku, Cusco, Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, and Sacsayhuaman. Many are starting to believe that these megalithic structures are thousands of years older than the Inca, and therefore parts of the Inca road system are as well thousands of years older than that civilization.
The Incas, so many of their great structures, Cusco and their royal highway, you ask them who built these, how did you build these? And they'll say, we didn't build these. Well, who did build it?
The Incas had elaborate legends of coming through tunnel systems in the earth, appearing on an island in Lake Titicaca, and then coming to Cusco and finding already a system of tunnels and ancient mines and structures. It was a home of the gods, where they lived.
Before they left.
Paracas skull, number 44. Discovered in 2012, it has a weight of 2.8 pounds, 25% heavier than the average adult male skull. It has a cranial capacity of 1,500 cubic centimeters, 20% greater than normal. And it is missing a sagittal suture, the connective tissue joint found between the parietal bones in all human skulls. This is just one of hundreds of strange, misshapen skulls that have been found on the southern coast of Peru, dating back to 1927. It was at this time that archaeologist Julio Teo first excavated a massive burial complex, thought to have been built by the Paracas people who lived in the region from 800 BC to 100 BC.
Julio C. Teo was the father of Peruvian archaeology. And in the 1920s, he discovered mummy bundles, and in each mummy bundle was a person with an elongated skull. They were buried in family mausoleums, in some cases as deep as 30 feet into the bedrock.
Mainstream archaeologists say the elongation is most likely the result of head binding, which involves wrapping the heads of infants while their skulls are still soft in order to change the shape. It is a practice found in numerous cultures throughout the world that dates back thousands of years. But why would people desire to elongate the heads of their children? Ancient astronaut theorists suggest that head binding originated with primitive humans who were attempting to imitate the appearance of extraterrestrial visitors. But according to researcher Brian Forster, the assistant director of the Paracas History Museum, head binding would not account for the other anomalies that the Paracas skulls exhibit.
About 5% of the elongated skulls that we find in Paracas are so complex in shape and size that it's hard to believe that they're the result of any form of cranial deformation or head binding. Not only are they elongated vertically, but also the eye sockets are much larger than normal. There are 2 holes in the back of the skull called foramen, through which blood and nerve flow occurred, and also their jaws were very robust.
And among the largest of them, we find skulls 60% heavier than normal human skulls and a brain capacity that is 2.5 times larger than the normal human brain.
But if these elongated skulls were not the result of the ancient practice of head binding, then just who or what were these mysterious beings? In 2014, DNA testing was performed on Paracas skull number 44, which rendered surprising results.
Some initial DNA testing has been done, and the results, according to the geneticist, are quite startling. There were certain segments of the DNA that didn't match anything known to be human. What it suggests to me is that Paracas could very well have been an ancient bloodline related to Homo sapiens, but not specifically Homo sapiens itself.
When you look at this kind of archaeological evidence, you're seeing concrete, tangible, DNA testable proof that extraterrestrials walked on Earth right among us.
Southeastern Turkey, buried beneath 20 feet of sand, archaeologists unearthed the world's oldest temple complex, Göbekli Tepe. Radiocarbon dating suggests that the site dates back to at least the 10th century BC, a time before the end of the last ice age, and 6,000 years before prehistoric man was said to have developed language.
Göbekli Tepe is really one of the greatest archaeological discoveries of all time. There are very few finds in archaeology that really change the whole way we look at the past, and that is essentially what has happened, because our view of hunter-gatherers has changed enormously. We now know they were capable of coming together in large numbers, under presumably some kind of authority, to cooperate on massive projects such as Göbekli Tepe, which involve bringing huge pieces of stone from quite some distance away, carving it beautifully, setting these pillars upright, and doing this on a massive scale.
The very first temples in the world are at Göbekli Tepe. And this, in many ways, changes everything, because here we have the smoking gun of a lost civilization. It confirms to us absolutely that at the end of the last ice age, there was high culture existing in the world.
There's no doubt in my mind that there are question marks all around the ancient world. And Göbekli Tepe offers such a giant question mark because, according to mainstream science, we were sitting in caves munching on bananas. And clearly, that isn't the case.
Although to date, archaeologists have only excavated less than 1 acre of this 22-acre site, what they have found is astounding. The remains of a complex of buildings, massive walls, and T-shaped stone formations, some 9 to 10 feet tall and weighing up to 50 tons. Many of the stone pillars are covered with relief carvings of animals, reptiles, and insects. Archaeologists have also found figures at the site that appear to represent humans with strangely stylized clothing.
We have no idea what these humans represent. We suspect that these are not just simple statues commemorating people. They could be gods, they could be spirits, they could be ancestors, something of that kind.
But perhaps most intriguing, is a life-size statue found just 6 miles away that has been dated to the same period. The Urfa Man.
This looks like a person who has come from an advanced civilization, who's wearing something that has much more of a defined collar, possibly even some sort of advanced spacesuit. What the heck is he doing there? His face looks strange, he's bald, his head, his eyes look weird. There's something unusual about this guy, and that could be a clue that leads us into the mystery of an antediluvian or pre-flood civilization.
Is it possible that the strange humanoid figure found near Göbekli Tepe actually represents an extraterrestrial, a being from a lost civilization that existed on Earth sometime before the last ice age? If so, does it give credence to other ancient stories describing otherworldly civilizations that once existed here on Earth?
All over the world, we have giant statues and carvings of people's faces and heads. Some of them are giant colossal heads, like the Olmec colossal heads. Others are the Easter Island type statues, which are huge and depict people who have elongated heads. They're cone heads, essentially. They were giants of yore with godlike powers. In my mind, we would call them extraterrestrials.
There's this recessed courtyard in Tiwanaku that has all these different faces. These stones were found underneath the soil, meaning that at some point, some type of event happened that buried these particular stones. Some have actually surmised that they represent some type of a pre-flood civilization, that what we have here is in fact a remnant that depicts that society.
Located just 30 miles northeast of Mexico City, the Teotihuacan complex encompasses nearly 8 square miles and is dated to the 1st century AD. It is the oldest and most sophisticated city of Mesoamerica, an area that extends from northern Mexico down through Central America. The civilization predated the Maya by at least 100 years. At its peak, it was said to have supported nearly 100,000 residents. It was also the largest city in the entire Western Hemisphere prior to the 15th century, and served as the major commerce and religious center for the region.
The significance of Teotihuacan cannot be overstated. It is the Rome of Mesoamerica. The things that Teotihuacan did set the pattern for all other city-states after it.
The central features of the complex are 2 large pyramids, known as the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, as well as a temple dedicated to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent. These structures stand alongside a thoroughfare referred to as the Avenue of the Dead. Over 200 smaller buildings, platforms, and pyramids are found adjacent to the avenue. And there are thousands of living quarters just outside the complex. But as incredible as Teotihuacan is, no one knows exactly who built this metropolis or what happened to its occupants.
Teotihuacan, despite its size, has no hieroglyphs whatsoever. There are other cultures in Mesoamerica that were using writing systems. There's nothing like that at Teotihuacan. So we don't really have a clear history of what happened at Teotihuacan, and we can't really find evidence of their rulers.
We don't know who were the original Teotihuacanos. We don't know where they came from. We do not know how they were able to develop a complete, huge, complex citadel in the middle of nowhere and able to sustain thousands of inhabitants.
We have such a sophisticated site that embodies engineering principles, craftsmanship, art. Where did it originate? Where are the smaller versions of this? Well, we don't find any. So we don't have a progression, an evolution to show where this came from. So we have to ask, where did it come from?
We become conditioned to look at these awesome works of stone architecture and think, oh, primitive people did that, and they used primitive methods with primitive technology. But we have to rethink the fundamental assumptions and come to a greater and greater level of understanding that the technology required to build these artifacts, in fact, is greater than anything that they possessed.
But based on the local lore of the region, ancient astronaut theorists suggest that the original builders of the site may not have been human at all.
All of the people in this area felt this city was a sacred site, connected to a divine realm. The population along the coast were the Totonac. They believed that the place was founded by a dozen sky gods, the lords of thunder. Other nearby Mesoamerican cultures had their own theories. One associated the site with the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl, who was said to have come from Venus. It was the Aztecs who gave the place its name, Teotihuacan, City of the Gods.
The name speaks for itself. So one has to ask the question, what God